Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about heroes on the bottom lane on Vainglory. Update 4.1 just got released 1 week ago or so. And the meta didn't change very much, pretty much similar. There were very few hero changes, as you saw on the previous video that I did. But I was doing like a series of different videos, which heroes are better in each position. And I started with the top. Now let's go into the bottom lane. Bottom lane is mostly for weapon carries, so most of these are going to be weapon carries. You can also play CP on some specific, very specific way if you see a proper counter or something like that. The main point is because the weapon buff is in the bottom part of the map. That's why you want sometimes to get the weapon buff for yourself. But you can also play CP on the bot, and if you do, it's a different kind of hero pool. I'm going to only focus on the traditional weapon ones and which ones are strongest right now. Starting with the first one, Kinetic. That's my number one pick on the bottom right now. If you know how to play her well, you can do different kind of builds. I've seen a lot of people use her with the Serpent's Mask build, though, so she has a lot of sustain, and then add up a Bone Saw to it or a Breaking Point to it, and just do a ton of damage and keep staying alive because of all the sustain that Serpent's Mask gives you. If you overdrive the B, you also have a stun with your A, which is quite useful to do some crowd control later in the game as well. And the ultimate charged pulse just got a buff on update 4.1, so definitely quite worth checking out. The next hero on the list that I have is Kestrel. She got a buff. She was already quite annoying, and now she got a buff, so she's even stronger than before. You need to be very skilled to play Kestrel. It's a different way of playing from the other heroes, but overall, if you know how to play her well, she can be very oppressive. Most people do Sorrow Blade and 2 Tyrants Monocled on her. Other kind of builds might also work, but usually you want to hit very hard, punish people who you catch on your active camo. And you mostly play around your active camo, using it defensively. Whenever someone tries to gank you, you put the active camo, back off, try to stun them, and then do enough attack damage to finish them off. But she's very good at poking as well, and she has the ultimate that covers the whole map, so that's also useful to help people on other lanes or finish someone off with the one shot, one kill. Another hero that's still very strong on the top lane is Baron. On the top lane, on the bottom lane, he got a little bit of a nerf on his jump jets, but overall, and on the rocket launcher as well, but overall he's still quite decent. Not as good as he used to be, but he's still pretty decent on 4.1, especially if you get 3 items on him. He starts hitting very hard. Most people do Sorrow Blade, and then they do Tornado Trigger, and then they go for either Tyrant's Monocle or Bone Saw, depending if you want to do a lot of hits or actually do hits that do a lot of damage. So it depends a lot on what you want to do. You usually need some defensive itemization as well, so it depends. But yeah, Marin's still pretty decent. Not my main pick right now on the bottom lane, but he's still pretty decent, especially for the late game. Another very strong pick right now on update 4.1 is Gwen. You can see her artwork here. She has a very strong early game with the buckshot, and the skedaddle manages to get away from places where she would normally get ganked. When you reach later in the game, you have the Ace's High to help stun up someone, set them aside, focus them down. Maybe even use defensively when someone is attacking you, jumping on you, use the Ace's High to stun them so you have time to get away. So a lot of stuff on Gwen's kit. She's very good, especially on the early game. Most people do Sorrow Blade, Tension Bow, and then something to speed up, maybe Poison Shiv, maybe Bone Saw. But you can do a lot of different builds with her as well. Let's move on to another ranged hero that's very strong on the bot right now is Ringo. He got a buff on this latest update as well. His ultimate starts doing more damage than it did before. He's very strong. He has the Twirling Silver that gives him an extra speed up. His heroic perk is always also pretty nice to clear up lanes relatively fast. The Akali's shot helps slow down an opponent who has overextended, and you see the Alfire Brew just got a buff that does more burst damage when it contacts the enemy. So overall, Ringo is in a pretty good position. He always been in a good position. He never really fell off the meta. So a nice alternative to Gwen and Kestrel. And it's also very useful on the late game. If you have him with the 3-4 items, he starts hitting like a truck. Most people do Sorrow Blade, Bone Saw, and then maybe Tyrant's Monocle. A lot of people used to do Breaking Point. I don't know if Breaking Point build is still pretty decent, but it was pretty similar as well. Sorrow Blade, Breaking Point, and then Tyrant's Monocle or something like that, or Bone Saw, depending on your enemy itemization. You can also do the other build that uses Spell Sword if you want to use your A and your B a lot more often on those team fights. Spell Sword is also a viable build. You just have to have an extra burst item there so you can actually be on the team fights doing a lot of damage. Some people sometimes couple Spell Sword with Sorrow Blade, or you can even get 2 Spell Swords and then the Tyrant's Monocle, or a Spell Sword and 2 Tyrant's Monocle, something like that, to have extra critical damage when you're actually entering those team fights. Excuse me. Another item that is being used a lot on the bottom lane is Adagio. It's one of the oldest heroes around, along with Ringo. It has a very peculiar way to play him. The Gift of Fire heals you up, but at the same time also adds that, what's it called? Arcane renewal, I guess. Well, the fire that burns around the enemy, which when you do a basic attack gives extra damage. The Agent of Wrath gives you an empowered attack damage, and you have the ultimate that is also very good for mostly team fights to either disengage the team fight or make sure that the enemy is very punished if they dive onto your team. So yeah, Adagio is a very good pick. You need to be able to play him well. It's not as trivial as the other heroes. You need to make sure that his arcane renewal is on the enemies that you're actually attacking. This can be hard for some people who are not used to Adagio, so I would recommend you checking it out. A lot of different builds happening around. There's one in particular that's been more famous recently, but I'm not really sure what the items were on that one. Probably Sorrow Blade, Tornado Trigger, Tyrant's Monocle, I believe, but I'm not sure. Also, some people sometimes use those more utility items, like maybe Shiver Steel or Storm Crown on him to have an extra perk damage on his kit, which can work. You want people. Shiver Steel helps you keep your enemies closer to you, which is good when you're Adagio, because you want to put the Gift of Fire in and not let them get away. But you need to be ahead in terms of level for that to work. Otherwise, you might probably die if you're not careful. But anyways, Adagio, people been playing it a lot, and I was forced to mention it. Other heroes that you can play, Sky also got a buff, so her forward barrage is doing more damage. You can play her as weapon, you can play her as crystal. A lot of people been trying out the weapon power build path on Sky more often now. You need to be very careful playing Sky. You need to keep some distance between you and the enemy team, especially if the enemy hero that you're facing is melee. Her heroic perk helps you move around a bit faster, but you need some skill to be able to dodge the skill attacks and reposition yourself properly. So very skill based, but very fun hero to play as well. So if you're not very used to playing Sky, I would definitely recommend you check her out. It's a very interesting hero to play. More heroes that we have lined up. Silvernail, still okay in the bot. It's not everyone's favorite, but you can do a lot of crowd control with his stakes. Um, some people use Sorrow Blade and Tension Bow on him. I also seen a lot of people doing a similar sustain build similar to Kinetic with Serpent's Mask, Sorrow Blade, and Breaking Point, or Serpent's Mask, Breaking Point, Bonesaw. Both of them work, but yeah, the point is that you try to keep yourself in the team fight for as long as possible, and Serpent's Mask really helps for that. But if you're still getting 1 versus 3, you're still going to die in the end unless you have an extreme snowball game advantage at that point. So yeah, you need special skill to play Silvernail. Mostly the way you place your stakes to be able to counter if an enemy dives onto you. So it's more of the defensive way to play instead of an offensive. But I guess you can play it different ways. It depends on how you play it. I haven't played that much Silvernail, so I probably should shut up now and just move on to the next hero. The next hero we have, I tried to include some melee heroes on the bot as well. Kensei got a huge buff, so it's definitely worth trying out again now. His immovable mind gives you an extra perk that gives you a shield whenever you do some basic attacks. And Lotus Strike gives you extra basic attacks as well. That helps you with the shielding as well. The Kensho increases your damage, I believe, and also resets the no Path of the Running stuns. Oh, okay, if you use Kensho and then you use Path of the Ronin, the Path of the Ronin will stun your enemy as well. So if you're not Kensho'd up, your Path of the Ronin will not stun the enemy opponent. So yeah, check out the video on how to play him. You need some degree of confidence to play him. Usually you want a build that is very basic attack fast. So something like Breaking Point, Tornado Trigger, Bonesaw. You might put Sorrow Blade in it, might put Tension Bow in it. Depends a lot on how you like to play your Kensei. But most people that I've seen playing Kensei have Serpent's Mask, Bonesaw, Breaking Point. So they have Sustain and Shred armor at the same time. And you also need some defensive itemization to make sure that you're not being stunned up. Because if you're stunned, you're pretty much dead. Reflex block and the shroud thingy, whatever it's called, celestial shroud, I think. Anyways, Kensei is one of the strongest melee heroes for the bot right now. Another one that is also quite strong in the bot is Batiste. Similar build to Kensei, either Serpent's Mask or Poison Shiv, and then Breaking Point or Bonesaw or Tornado Trigger. All of them work. You want to do a lot of hits, so you have your heroic perk activating very fast, and also that triggers an empowered attack coming up faster as well. So and you want to be as empowered as possible. So the more attacks you do, the more you will be on the empowered mode, which will do a ton of damage. Rinse and repeat. You can be very deadly with Batiste singling out enemy heroes, and also a lot of crowd control with both the Ordained and the Fearsome Shade. Another hero that's also very strong in the bot, even though he got a slight nerf / rework, he does less damage as a weapon carry, but he's still pretty good on the bot lane, especially if you want to counter those mages or tanky builds that usually show up in the top lane of the enemy. You have Lance. Lance does a ton of damage with his Impale. You can use him as a Githian roll to defend. You can use the combat roll to do some poke, to finish someone off. So a lot of different ways you can build on Lance. Most people do Sorrow Blade, Tension Bow. Seen a lot of people do Serpent's Mask and Tension Bow as well to have more sustain on him. And I've seen even some people use Spell Sword just to have more cooldown than you already have and use your abilities more often. You can even do hybrid builds with Lance if you do Spell Sword and either, I don't know, Aftershock. That also works decently. You can also put some utility, those purple things on him, either Shiver Steel or what's it called, Storm Crown. So it depends a lot what you do want to do with Lance. But if you want to do him specifically only weapon hitting hard, you need probably Sorrow Blade, Serpent's Mask, and Tension Bolt. That would be my recommendation. Then probably maybe Tyrant's Monocle on top of it. Possibly, maybe. So yeah, those are the top or the bottom lane heroes that I would recommend right now. Using weapon builds. There's also Jewel, for example. She's still okay weapon. There's also Rona. She got a buff. She might be more viable now again. Not quite sure. Haven't tried her yet on the bottom lane, but it's a possibility as well. So yeah, do you guys have any other recommendations? What works on the bot? What doesn't work on the bot? I've seen a lot of people playing Sanfeng as well on the bot. He's quite OP right now, and if you know how to play him properly, he's a very good counter to top lane hero, especially if your enemy picks a squishy top lane hero. So yeah, those are the recommendations that I have for you right now. Let me know what you think on the comments below. If I missed your favorite hero, why you think they are better on the bottom lane, all that jazz. Don't forget to like, subscribe, donate a kidney. See you next time. Bye bye. Take care.